Thank you, Muli. And thanks to Mudit for the segue and the spicy appetizer. So I'm Rajeev, the founder of Secureum. Just to set the context, we'll assume that most of you are familiar with what audits are. But the topic of this panel is the flavors of audits, right? So audits have been around for a while, and recently we have seen different flavors in terms of who performs the audits, many other attributes as well. So we're going to focus on sort of a high-level question of conventional audits and the community-oriented ones, or the competitive ones, right? So, but before we start off, we have a fantastic set of panelists here. Would like to request all of them to introduce themselves and their projects before we kick this off.
My name is Hari. I'm one of the co-founders of Spearbit. Previously, I was working at the Ethereum Foundation, building the Solidity language and the compiler. Yeah, that's it.
Gonçalo, co-founder of Consensys Diligence. Been operating for almost 7 years now. Mostly services, off-chain, on-chain. A lot of tools as well, fuzzers, symbolic execution engines, so on and so forth. And also we have a stealth thing, well, kind of stealth, that it's called Creed, that is coming out. So that's cool.
Hey everyone, my name is Mehdi, co-founder and director of Sigma Prime. We are a blockchain security firm. Been around for about 8 years, doing a lot of smart contract security reviews, but a bunch of L1, L2s, and bridges and whatnot. We're also the founders and maintainers of Lighthouse, the Rust implementation of the Ethereum consensus layer, currently responsible for about 35% of the user market share.
Hey guys, I'm Jack Sanford, one of the co-founders of Sherlock, and Sherlock has been around for about 2.5 years. We are a smart contract coverage protocol as well as an auditor.
Hey everyone, I'm Josselin Feist. I'm the engineering director of the blockchain team at 12bits.
Thank you. We got a poverty of mics over here. No, it's okay. We're all good. We'll share. My name is Mitchell Amador. I'm the founder and CEO of Immunefi. Immunefi is the biggest bug bounty platform in crypto. So, these DeFi and on-chain exploits are our bread and butter. Everything we do is about making projects safe post-deployment, and that ends up being a lot of things, but bug bounties is always the name of the game.
Hey there, Sock from Code Arena. I'm one of the founders and first handful of people in the Discord on day one. The Code Arena is a creator of the competitive audit, and we've just really been focused on creating as many opportunities for people in the field to level up and to create as many opportunities for protocols to achieve a greater level of security at a more efficient rate than a traditional audit.
Awesome. So let's maybe level set a bit more. So audits, we just use the term. We may want to use reviews or assessments, but I think we're just stuck with it, at least for this panel and maybe a few more years. But what do audits mean to each of you, right? For each of your projects, your missions? Because the way we see it, we may think of audits as something, the protocols may have different expectations, the users may have a totally different, zero bug expectations. So what do audits mean to each one of you? And also, what's conventional or unconventional about each of your approaches? I think that'll be a good start. And we can go around for this question because each of you is very unique. So maybe start with, you want to start on that side?
The poor side of mics.
Uh-oh.
Well, I mean, the reality is that, I think actually there was a talk that Mitchell gave at TrustX last year and was talking about the fact that bug bounties are really the absolute last line of defense when it comes to security. And the idea that that in fact it is an indicator of the immaturity of the space in general, that like we have so much that's secured by bug bounties. And I think in reality, I would actually extend that a little farther and say that an audit actually should be the last line of defense. That a bug bounty is a break glass in case of emergency. You know, at the point that kind of the going rate is maybe 10% of user funds, you're maybe overspending at that point in terms of what you might want to spend. And so an audit is intending to prevent at the last bit as many bugs as you can from reaching production. So that's the main thing that I see. But it's actually an assessment of what you've been doing from day one when it comes to security.
Okay, so I mean, you're totally right. Just to call out that one particular point about the whole move. This is move left, right? In traditional security, right? Always move farther up the stack earlier in the process, more and more preventative. But if you feel that way about bug bounties, you should see what people say about their auditor spend. Of course, I think we've all spent a lot. Certainly, I have, and we don't really have a choice about that matter. The reality of the fact is, it's impossible to create secure software, and we've decided to put the most valuable things in the world in a extremely kind of finicky, young, immature technology stack. We're like, yeah, this is a good plan. And by the way, let's move the entirety of the world economy on here while we're at it. So under these conditions, where we have the highest possible security needs, and we just don't have enough time, we don't have enough people, we don't have enough anything, like, what is an audit? An audit is just another type of code review, right? We have our internal tooling inside, which is ideally, in an ideal world, we would have tools, or we would hire people, and they would just find everything, and life would be good. And then we would never need any external code review, but that doesn't work, right, for reasons that we all understand. And so then we go to the layer of external code review, and that begins the process. And usually, typically, best practice teams will start with a traditional audit, right, which you're going to have highly expert people from highly vetted firms who've been doing this for you, just phenomenal engineers who will help you not just look for vulnerabilities in your code, but say, hey, is the architecture here wise? Are you're getting boxed into such and such a choices? Have you, foreseen the second, third, fourth order consequences of that? And from there, right, then we have the remainder of the flow, right, the new types of audits, which I think are very, very exciting, and then bug bounties, which is really just another type of code review, right? You could think of it as another type of audit, but really it's the action of let us review this code and the entirety of this infrastructure with the scope widening and widening and widening as you get more and more closer to production. Let us review this and see if we can find anything that allows us to break the assumptions in such a way that causes irreparable harm to the mission of that protocol, which in our case, of course, is theft of money or damage of valuable assets.
Yeah, so if we think about what are our goals, what are the things we are trying to achieve, with this security review or audits, or this type of things. From a traditional review, for better lack of term, what we are really trying to achieve is that we are trying to help developers to understand where they are at, what are the risks they have, what are the areas they should invest in terms of security. And to achieve this goal, we have a couple of things to do. First one is going to be, to look for vulnerabilities. That's the most obvious one. But a lot of the work that we actually do during security review is to advise developers, to tell them, look, here you have a systematic risk in the way you are designing your component. Maybe try to refactor it in this way. Maybe create like a single component for this multi-component step. Maybe improve your documentation on this specific aspect. So a lot of the work we do is really about helping and kind of filling the gap with respect to the code maturity of the client and with respect to the risk they might have.
That's interesting. I would actually disagree with that. I think there's only one thing you really care about in an audit, and that is finding problems that will cause losses for users. Like making sure whatever this protocol is supposed to do, it does it well, and it doesn't cause massive amounts or even a material amount of fund loss for users. And that should be the main goal. And gas optimizations, informational, findings, that kind of stuff is great, but it's not core to what an audit is. I even think a fixed review, Sherlock includes a fixed review after every audit we do, but I don't think that's core either. The core thing is, did you find as many of the problems that could cause losses for users in that code base at the commit you were given as possible. And to answer the second question, what is the conventional or unconventional approach of Sherlock? Sherlock is kind of the best of both worlds, so we have a foot in both worlds. We have the conventional auditing approach where we reserve auditors, pay them a fixed amount of money to show up and do an audit, and we also include an audit contest component. And yeah, I mean, in terms of the title of this panel, conventional versus community, which one is better? Sherlock thinks they're both absolutely essential to conducting a good audit, and you need both of them. And Sherlock is the only one that actually has both of them. And part of my talk at 5:20 later today, if anyone is interested, is going through the last year of seeing which of those two parties found more vulnerabilities over the last year in Sherlock audits, like who has been carrying their weight, I guess, between the conventional and community side. So stay tuned for that.
I'd be very interested to come to your talk because I wonder how you're able to qualify the number of critical findings, high severity findings that a firm like my firm or Trail of Bits firm or Gonçalo's firm has been doing over the past year, just because it's very difficult for us to publish some of our work, right? So it's I'm just curious about your data collection method, but I'll rock up in a few hours.
Good. Looks like we are warming up.
I'll see you in the audience.
Getting a bit cold as well, so this is good.
Sorry, just circling back to everything that was said, I don't disagree with anything that you guys have said. I think everything makes sense. The way we tackle security audits at SecP is the traditional way. They're time-boxed security assessments. You got to think as well that not everyone's willing to spend, hundreds of thousands of dollars on a security review, right? And in some cases, people come to us and they're like, hey, we're cash-strapped, but could you work with us? It's difficult to say no, right? Especially if the project is interesting, the team is, keen to work with you. So in those cases, we may allocate a couple of weeks, but everyone knows that's nowhere near enough to dive into everything, to dive into every single component that makes up the platform. So I'd be hesitant to say, we shouldn't be working with these people. We should only be conducting assessments when they're 100% thorough. Because circling back to what was said earlier, I believe that it's just important to give feedback whenever you're ready for feedback, right? You may be conducting a bunch of experiments, you may be trying out a whole bunch of features, you don't necessarily know what's going to land in production, but at some point you decide to take a snapshot of your development and reach out to one of us. And that's absolutely fine, right? But this is, again, the disconnection in expectations, right? What do users expect from audit reports? What do protocol teams expect from audit reports? And this is a fight I've been fighting for way too long now, where, degens out there would take this guy's reports and say, yep, cool, sounds good to me. I've only seen, a couple of lows, a couple of informationals. There you go. I can dump a whole bunch of money into this stuff, right? Well, have you even looked at the executive summary? Have you even looked at what, Trail of Bits or Sigma Prime or any other firm has actually looked at? So it's a bit frustrating sometimes. And, some of that narrative has been relayed by, some people here. And it's every time I see that on Twitter, I'm just, it's not helping. It's not helping. But all right, I'll stop bitching for a bit.
I'll answer the question. What is an audit for me? It's a checklist. So I think this part, like we've talked about it so many times, we don't do audits. That's the first thing. Maybe DeFi safety does audits. We don't. We never did. Second, I don't think bug bounties are audits at all. And I'm glad that we're calling it in the panel conventional versus community audits. And nomenclature kind of doesn't matter because I can call a table whatever I want, right? Like if I have a name for it and we all agree that that's what we call it, that's fine. But they are not audits or security reviews. They are a completely different thing. I'm not saying that they don't have a place in the stack of security procedures that you should do to your project, but they're not audits. The same way that Community audits are not audits. So Code Arena is a bunch of people doing solo reviews that are then aggregated, which is not the same thing as a team doing a security review. So what we call them from now on kind of matters. I think we should all have a group discussion the same way that we had for not calling these things audits and they are security reviews. We should probably have the same conversation going forward for all of these things. And but I guess Sherlock's still winning because both in different places.
We're winning?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Guys.
Yeah, for Spearbit, our approach has been to combine the best elements from all of these people. We bring some of the best independent talent to then collaborate on security reviews. We try to incentivize them, and we have more of a marketplace model where we just take a 20% fee on top, and some of the best researchers enjoy working with us because we are more fairer. We try to our collaborative approach ends up finding deep issues even in out of scope dependencies. Yeah, and I do disagree with one thing by the Sherlock, which is I think while I agree that the end goal is to minimize the number of user losses, you can't really get there without focusing early on core architectural issues. We do also focus on that. I think the safest protocols are the ones that are very well designed. So yeah, we need to cover that as well.
Yeah, looks like others want to respond.
I want to go back to what my colleague from Sherlock was saying, because I kind of disagree with the statement that what only matters are the bugs. Finding the bug is obviously really, really important. It's, you want to prevent loss of funds, but that's not sufficient. What's going to happen, in practice, is that developers are going to continue to develop the software. They're going to make a new version. They're going to iterate over it. And if you want to kind of, increase your security, if you want to be in a better posture, you need to understand how to build better software. And to understand how to build better software, it's not just by getting a list of findings, because a list of findings is not going to be that informative in the long term. That's why having all this information, having all this feedback about design, about component, about structure, test, is really important in the long term. Finding the bugs are only going to help you in the short term, but not in the next iteration of your protocol, not in the long-term thinking. And if we want to kind of win as a security community, it's really important to focus on all this aspect.
Can I have a quick... Yeah, so I actually, still disagree. I think that, like Sok was saying, we want to make audits the last line of defense. The audit is really expensive, and it's something that you're trying to do at a point in time so that you can get your code safely to mainnet. And helping a protocol team during its development, helping with the architectural design, that kind of thing, that's really great. That's super important, but that's called consulting, in my opinion. And the audit is a specific thing to find the problems in the code base with the intention of having that code base go to mainnet probably soon.
Can I ask just one question, Rajeev? Because I really don't know, Jack. How does Sherlock work? Because I really don't know. This is a genuine question. Do you, if I'm a customer and I come to you, what's the order of things that happens? What's the user flow? Do you do the security review first and then you put up my code for a code contest, all inside Sherlock? Are they different services? Do you do them always both for a certain client?
Yeah, so the right time to come to Sherlock, and that we kind of recommend, is having it be your last audit. And that's because we find, some other audits are more on the consulting side or whatever, and maybe the code base isn't quite ready, and Sherlock is really the most intense audit I think you can get, and the amount of findings that come out of it are sometimes unmanageable for protocol teams. So we think of the audit as that last piece right before you're going to mainnet, and a lot of protocol teams don't actually have a good experience because they think that it's maybe something else, and they aren't ready for all of the findings that come out of it. They weren't ready for the final exam, basically. And so Sherlock kind of thinks of itself as the final exam. before you go to mainnet, before we add the smart contract coverage on mainnet. And to answer your question, the contest piece happens alongside the kind of reserved auditor piece. So those happen at the exact same time. And the reserved, we could call them more conventional auditing model with those reserved auditors are actually competing against the contest participants. So both sides are kind of extra incentivized in that sense.
And it always happens. You don't sell the services separately.
We have not sold the services separately as far as I know.
Yeah. So I think this is great. I think we may be too deep into the space, so we're probably making assumptions that people know how Sherlock works or how C4 works. So that was sort of the point of the first question. Maybe starting with SOC, can you take maybe 30 seconds and explain how C4 works? It used to work in a certain way maybe 2 years ago, but it has evolved, right? There are a whole bunch of services that you guys offer, and same with Sherlock. And we do, by the way, if you didn't realize, so we do have the convention, quote unquote, the conventional bucket would be TrailerBit, Sigma Prime, and Diligence, because they have been around for a while doing different things. And the community one is, again, sort of a loaded term. There is a contest-based, which is Sherlock and Code Arena, but then we have Spearbit, which is not entirely, well,
It's a hybrid.
It's a hybrid model. So you guys understand this, but maybe not all of us. Can you take 30 seconds to explain that, please?
Sure. So Code Arena is a competitive audit, which means that people show up in order to review as much, to review the code in the time that they're provided and find as many bugs as they can. The compensation for those bugs works on a model that was designed by Scott Lewis and Zach Cole. And the model is essentially that the more rare the bug is, the more severe the bug is, the higher the payout. And the bugs are judged by independent experts. Many of these originally were people who we sourced throughout the community. Nick Johnson was our second judge after Zach Cole, and had a number of folks just kind of come through on recommendation. But today, most of those are people who have competed in Code Arena and have moved their way into the ranks of being a judge. The thing that we have added over time is in the course of Code Arena, one of the things that I think is pretty essential as a piece that Code Arena contributes is, I think until Code Arena came around, one, there wasn't really a good way for people to identify who were good solo auditors and what the talent pool looked like in general. There were people who were out there doing solo audits, but there weren't necessarily people who could establish their talent in that same way. The other piece that I think is a key contribution is the fact that you have Code Arena has really driven down the price of well-known bugs. And we see that all the time in competition, where people who compete and have read all of the reports, because one of the things that we also did from the very beginning was we put all the reports public, we put all the code public, so that people who wanted to learn could go back and compare their results with the others who they competed against. But as a result of that, people studied those, and things that 6 months ago would have been worth, $10,000 or $1,000. That there are times when those bugs are only worth $1. And the first time I saw that, I kind of freaked out about it, frankly. And I was having a conversation with Scott Lewis, and he's like, "No, that's the algorithm working. Like, we want to pay as little as we can for bugs that are well known. When people have not added any additional marginal value in finding those bugs, that's a success. It means that we've actually educated more of the market on how to identify those bugs. And then we're putting more energy into finding the harder, more interesting ones." And I think that is something that Code Arena in general has really helped to pioneer for the space, just in that openness and that process of learning. And that's something that we're really focused on. The other piece that is a part of the process that exists today as a result of that is we started doing bot races where people who are building automated tools in order to identify findings are able to compete prior to the audit begins. prior to the beginning of the audit. So that way, we sort of get those things out of the way, and we have some really great bots that have actually started to identify more and more findings in the course of the in the course of competing. But the nice thing about that is then every single auditor who's competing gets access to that report in advance of competing, and those are all identified as known issues, right? So we're now not seeing, we don't have to have everybody submit the same bug, 100 times in order to reduce the value of it to its appropriate amount, because many times if they're that findable, they're usually more identifiable by bot. So, a big part of what we're trying to do is really identify talent and help talent to show up in all the various areas. For that same reason, we recently added analyses, which are intended to bring out the expertise of individuals who have more of a consultative view and are able to be, when booking as solo, are able to be taken in by protocols as a security advisor. And that's a big part of where we see and why we are investing in really the profiles that we've built recently on the site and enabling people to book solo engagements through the site, because we do want to get people earlier in the process from an expertise perspective. So there's a lot of elements to it, but there's some.
Anyone else wants to add to that?
Yeah, I guess I'll go next since our approach is similar to Code Arena. So the way to think about a audit contest is a protocol team has some code and they say, here's $100,000. And you can think of it sort of like anyone in the world can come get this $100,000 by finding bugs in a code base. And of course, multiple people will show up to try to do that. So then you want to split that $100,000 between different people. And the way it gets split is by who finds the most severe bugs, who finds the most bugs, and how many other people found those bugs, how rare they are. And that's pretty much, there's an algorithm that kind of helps determine who gets paid what out of basically anyone in the world who can come and try to find those bugs. And, we see Code Arena sees 200, 300, 400 people compete in contests from all around the world. And yeah, you just find a lot of crazy things when that happens. You find a lot of bugs that might otherwise get missed when that happens. And Sherlock also layers on a more traditional approach as well, where we reserve one or two top auditors who we know are very good and have proved themselves over time. They're at the top of Sherlock's leaderboard, and we make sure that they're going to show up and also participate in that contest. And if they don't do well, they'll fall down the leaderboard, someone will take their spot. So they're highly incentivized, but we just want to make sure that there's, a high level of quality in every audit, like a default level of quality in every audit. So we kind of combine that traditional piece as well. They help with the fix review, some of these other things that you might expect in an audit. And that's how Sherlock works, just with those two. So we have a foot kind of in both worlds on this panel.
Or do you want to add?
Yeah, sure. Our approach is like three different things. One, we are like highly collaborative. And the second one is we want to bring really the best talent to look into your code base. And the third thing, of course, is we believe in like multiple eyes being better. We want like 4 to 5 people looking into the same code multiple times so that we can be sure that a lot of the vulnerabilities are caught.
Do you behave as a marketplace, Hari? Can I choose who I get?
Yeah, you can. Yeah.
Okay.
I guess for the 3 traditional players out there, correct me if I'm wrong, feel free to chime in if I'm not representing our side of the industry well, but you reach out to Trail of Bits, Consensys, Diligence, Sigma Prime, and you kick off a sales process, right? If you reach out to Sigma Prime, you get to talk to me usually, and I go through a scoping exercise, right? You share with me your code base, and I start going through every single contract, in the case of Solidity, EVM stuff, that you would like to see reviewed. And we essentially estimate how much time it would take for a team to perform a review to provide a decent level of security assurance. So for SIGP, we always include testing in our approach. That's perhaps that might be a little differentiator between our other friends. But so for each component, you'll have person days for manual review and person days for testing. And testing can be done in different frameworks, Foundry, Forge, or Brownie, or we don't really dabble in JavaScript, but yeah. And then we give you a proposal, take a look at that proposal, give you a timeline, obviously, the earliest we can get the job done. And I guess an interesting part of the job is for us to be able to spot within our team the right members for that particular target. It's very important, right? I've got team members who have reviewed, perhaps as of today, 4 liquid staking derivatives, right? They're across, all of them, most of them, if not all of them. So when I get a request from a client who's building a liquid staking protocol, I'm going to obviously do my best to assign that protocol to the testers that have that level of experience. We can circle back later on how we train people, how we make sure that the knowledge is spread across the team. But yeah, that's essentially it. We are a services company, so if you're happy with that, we then get started and kick things off and produce a report and a test suite that you essentially is yours. You can do with it as you see fit.
I agree with everything. I would just want to take it back to the stack. Just if we're trying to get people to understand, I'd say that and this is my personal preference. I heard different things today, but I think that you have the manual review on top, then you have the code contest below and the bug bounty. The only undisputed 100% market share that we have here today is Mitchell. I basically refer everybody to Immunefi, right? Bug bounties are completely undisputed. Then we might have, I don't know, a choice between maybe Sherlock and in the Code Arena, or maybe not, because Sherlock is integrated, so it's monolithic. And then you have us. And so if any of these entry points, I guess the 5 entry points over here, because Spearbit is also an entry point, is probably the first people that you would contact, right? I wouldn't go talk to Mitchell first. That's probably the end game.
So let's put Mitchell on the spot. Mitchell, if you had a protocol on your bug bounty, which of these vendors would you recommend?
Wow, I'm in a rough spot today.
Well, it could be all 6.
So actually, this is a question that we have thought a lot about. We get recommendations, and I was, pondering to myself as I was listening, should I give the audience this particular model that we've developed for looking at this situation, which is, while these things all seem like, oh, here are audits, and there's all these different types and flavors to choose from. Who's the best? The way we look at it is that there are very specific things to prioritize at different parts of the stack. So to be quite frank, I would avoid, if I was, CISO or equivalent security lead at a project and they were asking me, how do we want to allocate spend here? We need to build out the ideal security setup. What are you going to do, Mitchell? Well, and they're going to say, hey, do you want to work with C4? They got bot races and so many people. I'd be like, no, absolutely not. That's a horrible decision. Not because it's not a very useful service. In fact, it's an excellent service at a certain stage of the life cycle, but that's not my problem, right, as I finish my internal review process. So after I've made as many investments I could on the internal side, so that's hiring my security engineers, that's investing in tooling, that's documenting the hell out of our stuff, that's building, as a good secure code development processes as I can, that's, threat modeling. After I've done all those investments, which are not, primarily monetary but time, then I want to bring my outputs, right, the outputs of my work to whatever degree is possible to the finest possible mind I can imagine. Okay, and it needs to be, and I need to pair that with my, my finest possible mind, and I need them both to attack what we have and see where it lands. And to be quite frank, while I am truly the most pro crowdsourcing person here, maybe not truly, but I'm trying to be, I would absolutely go to one of the private firms first. So I would go to a Consensys Diligence, I would go to a Trail of Bits, I would go to a Sigma Prime. I might also go to a Spearbit, but I think there are some questions, that I'm trying to answer about their service before I can have that conviction, right? There's something excellent about them, but it's not clear that they bring the level of comprehensive expertise that I would want at that initial engagement. Because that's where I'm having these architecture discussions, right? That's where I'm throwing them against my engineering team and saying, here's very expensive people we pay to tell you that you did everything wrong, and we're going to have to go back and fix it all. Thanks, man. It's a good thing we got this now. And I'm not really going to, I can only get that from an extremely, someone whose brand is both expertise, impartiality, and awareness, deep expertise up and down the stack, broad. It's got to be everything. They have to have the whole world view. They got to be smarter than me. And the firms that are most likely to have that talent, quite frankly, are the traditional audit firms, because they can best allocate resources to best attract that talent and structure their whole brand, mission, and the life of their business around that. That's something that the crowdsourced businesses will never be able to do, right? Because we have to select for a different set of conditions and priors in order to build a compelling product. So I say that, right, would definitely pick one of those. Now, I don't want to name names specifically, because then the other ones will beat me up. But I want to make a note about Spearbit in that. So what's my doubt with Spearbit? Like, Spearbit has this interesting model where they have effectively been capturing the top end of the audit contest kind of population and many of the auditors. And it's great, right? They've taken kind of that model in a cost-plus fashion and just driven it as far as they can. They can pay big wages to people while giving them a lot of freedom and giving them, and by freedom I mean, they can do whatever they want. They're not necessarily on contract to go and do the most interesting work. I mean, it's a great deal. But is that, right, in my first initial engagement when I'm at this, say, architectural stage, my first security review, and hopefully the most important, are those people going to have enough sophistication? Are they going to be process-driven enough? Are they going to have discipline? Right, and I need discipline really bad at this first engagement. I don't know if that's true. And that's my doubt about whether Spearbit can service that. If they do, that would be super exciting, but that's an open question. I need discipline. I need process excellence, beyond what I have. And I'm, a guy who invests in best practices on exactly that. Looking past that, now I have new needs for audits. And for context, Immunefi, with any of the stuff that we do on chain, which we do, we always do multiple audits. Okay? Now my priorities are beginning to shift. So I may want to go with a younger firm that is, more of an attacker's mindset from there. I can tolerate less discipline if I know that they're really creative. And so, a great example of that is hacker-founded firms. Okay? Hacker-founded firms are crazy. And that's why they can make great attackers, but not alone, because they can't be relied upon to get broad coverage of the potential issues. Only towards the end of this stage, right? You can see I might pick from a few different options. Only towards the end of this stage am I going to look at a audit contest-like element where I'm really just throwing eyeballs, hopefully as high-skilled as possible, but I'm throwing eyeballs at my code base to see if they can find what's left. But knowing that, it's like I can't have any expectations that they're going to find everything. I can't have any expectations that they have deep expertise. It's a gig economy kind of stuff. It's open doors. And hopefully it's the best type of it, but the reality is there are limited quality controls on it. And so it's at that time that I'm like, more eyeballs, the better. Right? And I would do, I'm very interested in that. I think it's hopefully will eventually become a normal practice in our industry to get these multiple rounds of reviews this way so that you get the benefit of top-class minds on every major deployment, and you get the benefits of, the best creativity you can muster, and you get the benefits of just lots and lots of eyeballs covering best practices. That would be phenomenal. But it's very expensive.
All right. Well,
I want to just answer the Spearbit question there. We do provide security across the entire stack, all the way from early engineering. We have a service called vCISO. You can hire one of our leading security researchers to work a couple of hours a week over your entire development cycle to have a gut check and give you advice on how to architect the protocol. In fact, many times we have completely re-architected, work with clients to completely re-architect the protocol to make it simpler and much more secure by doing this. Yeah. So if you are building protocols today, talk with us right away. We can help you build much better contracts so it can be secure by design almost.
Hey, so can we have content and case studies on that?
Sorry, can you repeat?
Can we have content and case studies on exactly that claim?
For sure.
And I would love to see that in public, right? Because there's an open question, in a lot of ways you guys are cherry picking some top class talent that could work out well this way. But discipline, there's no replacement for that? Can you guarantee that rigor? Can you guarantee that excellence, beyond just someone can show they can find lots of vulnerabilities? I can find, lots of hackers like that would not make good auditors at all and certainly couldn't do what I'm describing, right? The skill sets are not coextensive with one another. So I would love to see case studies wide on the internet for anybody to see about how you went in and you re-architected something. That would just be marvelous.
Yeah, for sure.
And very valuable, very informative.
Yeah, I mean, we have like architecture protocols to like, just a single contracts. They were like pretty new to Solidity, and they would just, architect like contracts as if it was a Web 2 app. And this is the wrong mindset to like build things in Solidity.
Aren't you worried about the churn of talent? Like, there's people just dropping out. Have you ever wished you could hire someone?
I actually think our approach decreases churn. We talk with a lot of security researchers that work in traditional audit firms. They're pretty much burned out working, 4 weeks out of a month, 52 weeks perhaps. We only recommend people to work 2 to 3 weeks in a month. A lot of our auditors, they enjoy like researching. As an example, like I tell this, like Hiccup, he's probably sitting here. He spends like 2 weeks doing audits, and the other 2 weeks he likes to learn CK. This is something we truly encourage our auditors to work on, and we think this decreases like churn. We speak with so many people who are like completely burned out from working in a traditional firm, and we like to avoid that.
Yeah, burnout is real. Burnout is real, and it's to be taken very seriously. Yeah, we've had, obviously, occurrences of people burning out, myself included, and it's very important to keep a finger on the pulse of every single team member you have on your team. And the way we try to do it at SIGP is to allocate a bit of time between each review. Obviously, every time DGens decide that it's a bull market, our inboxes explode, and some of our team members are sometimes a bit stretched. But yeah, this is a major point, and we're obviously always looking for ways to do better. And hopefully, I'm listening to my team, and they're the the best people to give me feedback on how we run things. But yeah, I just wanted to say that it's everyone's responsibility as well to keep an eye on the work-life balance. It's super important, because if we all burn out, then all of this is for nothing. So check on yourselves, check on your friends, make sure that you prioritize your well-being above anything else, because at the end of the day, that's what really matters.
So just to make sure I understand Spearbit model, when they do like research and things like that, are they paid or?
Yes.
Okay.
Our top researchers make 20K a week on base. Some projects pay even more. So they're very well compensated.
Sorry. Yeah, I don't think that's the question. The question is, when they're not doing engagements, when they're off for those 2 weeks, are they paid?
No, they're not. Yeah. But they are paid very well on the weeks they're working, so they don't have to.
I think that's an important point, because at Trade of Bits, our engineers on average are billed 50% of the time. So over a year, they are going to generate revenue for 6 months. What they do outside of that, they are going to be paid, but they are going to work on public goods, they are going to work on tools like Slither, Akina, so on, they are going to work on guidelines, they are going to work on presentation. And in addition to that, a lot of the work that they are going to do is that they are going to shadow audit. This means that they are going to participate in an audit which is outside of their area of expertise, but they are going to learn, and they are not going to be billed to the client. This gives them a huge kind of growth opportunity where, for example, you might be an expert in Solidity, you might be really, really good at Solidity, but you have no experience in Cairo, or you have no experience in West, and you want to learn by shadowing an audit with expert in West or in Cairo or whatever, you are going to learn a lot. So it's definitely some kind of benefit that people might not realize, but you are going to get by working on this type of company. Yeah.
Same thing at Diligence. But I have so many questions for you. And the churn one was not exactly what you answered. So what do you do if someone doesn't pay you enough to pay the lead security auditor? Do you reject the work?
Yes.
Yeah? You just say no?
Yeah, we say no to a lot of clients. We like I said, when we see a client, we give our genuine feedback on what should be done. We tell them this is not ready. You have to re-architect the whole thing. And if they say no, we don't really work with them.
Okay. And well, you also don't care about deal flow because like you only pay people when they work. So
Yes.
you don't have to guarantee you don't give any guarantees to people. And when I talked about churn, I was more interested in hearing what's the bounce back rate? Like, do people keep coming to Spearbit?
Oh yeah, of course. Once they get a taste of Spearbit, there is no going back.
Good. Sup? Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to jump in on something. So I'm actually wearing a shirt from him. I actually come from a traditional audit background. There's a firm that I ran with a partner who's here years ago. And working with traditional auditors, one of the things that I know is the case is, you talk about the question of discipline, you talk about the question of what it is to show up and work. And the fact is that traditional auditors working in a traditional firm, in a traditional process, have off days. And they do, honestly, because of just the nature of our our capitalist society, they do push themselves well past where their ability to perform may necessarily be appropriate. So in terms of
How so?
by which I mean they get burned out.
Yeah.
Right?
Obviously, yeah.
So-
So if you're talking about burnout, yeah.
Yeah,
absolutely,
exactly,
yeah.
right? So the thing that I see and absolutely love about the competitive model is the fact that there's a great quote from a guy named Peter Block, and community means always knowing that someone else is going to be there. And that's one of the things that I think is absolutely fundamental to the way that Code Arena works, in that it's not all on those individuals. The weight on individual auditors, and I'm talking about in Web 2, when we were dealing with far less dire circumstances, the weight on those individual auditors was so significant. I know many people who burned out doing that after a few years, just in Web 2. In Web 3, it's even more intense. And frankly, most of the people that I know who work in and as auditors, work in the field and as auditors, they're conscientious people who actually care a lot about what they're doing and why. And so when I look at the question, part of the reason that I love the competitive model is that it removes the level of intensity and pressure on those individuals for things that really do fucking matter.
But let me say
pardon
that
my
I
French.
let me say
Can I
that
quickly take back the mic for a second? So I think we have less than 10 minutes left.
Really?
Yeah, we're just getting started, but we have only 5 minutes or maybe
That's
around that
crazy.
left. So I think we've...
Can we just react to what this is very
Sure.
important.
5 seconds.
You go around.
I was gonna say that like here, I think that is a fair commentary, but I think we're thinking about like consultancy groups that are huge, right? Like typically that happens in EUIs, McKinsey's. We were just talking about this the other day. We work more like boutique shops, right? Like so there's a way bigger amount of care for the people that work in a 20 to 100 person team than there is in like a huge behemoth of a company, right? And the flip side to what you were saying about the community thing, and I do agree with you. Look, the community is always there, but we are a group of vetted people. Not everybody goes into Consensys Diligence. Like we take huge pride in the people that are in there, right? Like, whereas Code Arena, like Mitchell was saying, like they're always there. It's just different. It's just different. And I agree with you. Sometimes people's burnout.
This room is full of people who are absolutely amazing, who got their start at Code Arena, and they're disciplined, and they're amazing, incredible auditors.
I just want to react to one thing you said, and I'm a big fan of Code Arena. The traditional side, often recommend my clients to go and run contests. One thing that people should keep in mind is that you're not hiring, when you go to Trail of Bits, Diligence, or Sigma Prime, you're not hiring a specific auditor. You're leveraging the entire team, and that's extremely important. The quality assurance that goes through those engagements is second to none. Like I come from the traditional web security background as well, and the level of QA that was done then was nothing compared to the stuff that we do, and I know for a fact a couple of other people here do the same. So
we have to go to
sorry.
the next question. I know we can keep reacting and overreacting.
Too bad I was going to fire a torpedo, but let's continue that.
So I think by now we have level set, context set, people understand the different models, all of us including. So let's sort of switch, right? If there were one thing for the conventional guys that you like about the community approaches, and vice versa, what would that be? I mean, you said you love C4.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Last year, Mitch said that last time, we were the bottleneck. The auditors were the bottleneck to go to market. Like, it was ridiculous, right? You couldn't get anything done within, it's like 6 months, 9 months. And I'm really thankful for everyone here for all the alternatives that we can provide to the community. And I think it's a great thing. You don't have to wait 6 months, 3 months to get feedback. You can get feedback within days, weeks sometimes, right? And this to me is a really, really good thing.
Yes, yeah, timeliness, pricing, there's so many things. Yeah, Josselin?
Yeah, I think it's a great also like learning opportunities for a lot of people that are newcomer and want to kind of try their skills. But there is a but. I do think that people that are starting in the security space and go through Code Arena, Sherlock, or other might focus on Solidity security, but might lack some awareness on the spectrum of security. And I might make a couple of friends here, but we are a security event. If you walk around like this room, you are going to see a lot of independent researchers that look at their laptop. They don't have screen protector. They look at sensitive information. There are like 600 people at this event. Like, most likely, you are going to have, government agency, malicious actor working around. And the fact that some of the basic operational security are not followed by a lot of people at this event is kind of a signal to me that there is some lack of, training in terms of security that when you are in a competitive environment, you might not get easily.
I love them for all the reasons that I wouldn't pick Diligence, right? Like, so, the same thing that is a pro is also a con in my view. Like, sometimes we'll have scheduling issues. Like, sometimes we won't be able to attribute the individual person that you want because that's just not the way we work. And if that's your need, if that's your specific need, maybe you just need that one person that you really like. Maybe then you should go to Spearbit, and then you should still do Code Arena, and then you should still do bug bounties. They're completely different. So all of the things that you wouldn't use us for, that's why you should go to them.
What about the other side?
I just want to follow up to Josselin. I think training is very important in the space, not just for auditing firms, but across the ecosystem. In fact, Spearbit hosted the very first Foundry seminar. Shout out to Nascent and Brock for helping out with that. I think this seminar alone, 2-hour seminar, onboarded thousands of security researchers and projects building stuff. And I firmly believe today it's easier than ever to build secure contracts. In fact, it's easier to write a fuzz test in Solidity today than in any other programming languages ever. It's just a matter of adding an extra argument to your functions. It's easier to do formal verification in Solidity than in any other language today. I think the tooling is tooling keeps improving, and we believe we invest a lot in education. There's weekly talks. You can go to youtube.com/Spearbit to see what's happening. So yeah, that's it.
So Sherlock and C4, is there anything from the conventional space that you would like?
Yeah, I mean, I think on the tooling side, a lot of these firms up here have done incredible things for the entire space in an open source way, in a way that just benefits everybody. And that's actually if you look at what they've all built, it's really impressive. And I think another thing that they do well is kind of going back to Mitchell's point. I think they're really good at the consulting side. When you are maybe not ready yet for that final exam, they can help you get prepared, and they can help you, design some things and have conversations about different ways of structuring something that I think are really beneficial. And that's not a knock. You want to have a professor or a midterm or some quizzes before you get to the final exam. And then I think, the Sherlock, maybe the Code Arena are sort of better structured to be that final exam where you have hundreds of people looking for bugs in the code. Sherlock reserves 2 top hackers in the world, basically, to look at the code alongside those other 100 people. And so I think, both have a really important place in the space if you can afford multiple audits.
Hold on. You think auditors are hackers? I don't know about that, man.
Oh, the auditor hacker
Yeah.
debate?
I don't know about that. I don't know about. I'm just saying. But do I have to answer? Because I like everybody. You know.
Go for it.
You know. So the long and short of it is, I always loved working with the auditors. First, they drove me nuts in the old days because I was like, "Why are we doing this way?" And then I experienced some of those problems. I'm like, I'm so happy you guys are around. And then with these new crowdsourced security products, and by the way, we're really only scratching the surface. There's new techniques being developed. There's new companies in the making. There's new, like, what we're starting to see is the formation of a Substack, right, within that territory. Just as there was a stack within audits, depending on the type of firm and the type of value proposition they focused on, we're starting to see a Substack emerge on the competitive audit side. And that's, I'm over the moon for that in terms of the value it's going to provide to customers, in terms of the value it's going to provide to users, in terms of the opportunities it's going to create for everybody here. It's just right there. But we should remember, right, we are, how do I say this in the best way? It's not enough. It doesn't matter. We are dealing with the most hostile, possible environment. I have criticisms for the approach of every single model here, some of which would be pretty biting, I think. And yet, I am so excited for them to grow and expand, and in fact, we need more of them because the dream is to put trillions of dollars through this infrastructure, and to hit those bars, you need to max out, right, the quality of security product that you deliver on every single measure. I think some people get that. The Layer Zero was describing their spend amounts, and I was like, yeah, that sounds about right. They understand. They understand the seriousness of this game. So I am incredibly excited, despite all the limitations, all the arguments, all the, friendly or unfriendly competition. I hope all these things proliferate, and we need more, right? Calling out to the audience here, if you have an idea, if you want to create something, if you want to contribute something, we do not have enough as it is. We need more innovation, we need more scale, we need more participation, and believe me, certainly at Immunefi, but I also believe all my compatriots here would love to work with you in helping push these things farther along.
Fantastic. It sounds like we're just getting started, but we're out of time. So we should give at least a minute. We have a break coming up, so but maybe we can give some time for the audience. I'm sure they have a lot of burning questions.
Yeah, I have a question, might be a little bit too controversial, to Spearbit. So first is, do you have non-compete with your auditors? How you protect that people cannot go directly to your auditors? This is first. And second, how much fees do you keep to your company so that you run your operations from the, if it's a secret, please don't tell it, but it's very interesting to know.
We are extremely open, very few secrets here. We don't have any non-competes. We want to incentivize the best people to work with us, and we don't want to tie them down. That's fundamental to our business model. And our fees is one of the lowest here. We just charge 20%. The rest of it goes to the auditors. And that's how we incentivize some of the best people to come work for us.
Do we have time for one more? No? Okay. Yes? Just a quick question and maybe a quicker response.
Okay, then the quick one is going to be, if you don't have non-competes, do you have NDAs?
Sorry, could you? Yeah, with the clients and the auditors.
But not with the auditors?
Yeah, both of them. We do have NDAs, yeah.
All right, thank you. So you'll find all these people for the rest of the evening, hopefully. So please feel free.